Really good sign that you're living your authentic code, that you're living authentically, is that you feel energized, you feel in alignment, you feel more peace. You don't feel as much internal conflict. You're less doubting of yourself. You are more in trust. You're seeing the ways that people are attracted to you. You become a little bit more magnetic. You see the ways that you have more bandwidth maybe to pour into other people. Hey you, welcome to Create to Liberate. I'm Anissa. Today's video is about living by our authentic values, living authentically, more or less, really walking the talk. This topic became relevant to me this week, and I hope it's relevant to you as more of us are moving towards recognizing that maybe the society that we are born into doesn't really reflect our personal values. Maybe we're surrounded by people who don't necessarily live in alignment to their values, and we want to live in alignment to ours, or for other reasons. But knowing that it's so valuable to kind of come back to self and rediscover what feels right to me when I go within, what is the driving force behind the decisions that I make and the actions that I take. Is it something that was given to me, or is it something that's authentic? If this sounds interesting to you, then definitely stick around for more. As always, I share wisdom from my own lived experience, as I believe we're all each other's mirrors. We provide a mirror to each other to be able to see ourselves more clearly and hopefully empower each other. If you enjoy this video, like it on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you're listening on audio, a 5-star review is very welcome. Without further ado, let's get into it. So in today's video, we'll get into what is living by your authentic values really look like, how this is relevant to me, how you can really build an authentic life, and not just for now, but in the long term. So the word authenticity is thrown out a lot here and there on social media, etc. And it's a really important one for folks to unpack and understand what it means to them. I think authenticity changes over time. There's been many seasons and different iterations of Anissa, and I think if you're tuning into this, there's many transformative iterations of you. I was thinking about this in the context of things that I totally live by and shared as far as dating advice historically. It's not dating advice that is relevant to me today. My experiences have shifted me in a different direction. Oftentimes we are changing, we are updating. Our life experience is shifting us into different directions, and so it's so valuable to anchor back into, what do I really value? How do I really want to show up? Do I want to reprioritize things in my life? And the biggest way that I encourage most folks to approach this is by tuning into meditation, because in the silence of meditating and quieting your mind, you're allowed to receive more connection with source, more connection with your highest self, and get downloads on what is something that you might be suppressing, repressing, what is something that needs to come to the surface that might reorient your path, or might just be more truthful. And if we give ourselves that spaciousness, then yes, thereafter we can start doing some writing and journaling and taking down what is really authentic to us, what we want to really lean into. But if we are routinely building our day every single day based on things that we've decided on years ago, it might not be updated. It might not actually be authentic. It might be rooted in deep conditioning. I had a practice with my mom and my brother, and we did 1 year, 5 year, and 10-year goals as a New Year's resolution type thing. And it's so interesting to look back on the things that we thought were high priorities for us 5-10 years in advance. Over time, it's really shifted. I could see so obviously and evidently how much I thought schooling was so deeply important. I was like, I gotta get my MBA. I thought a lot of financial goals were super important. I thought certain milestones that had been shared with me, or I had made up in relationship to the systems and societal structures that I grew up in, that really deeply emphasize the importance of continued education, or deeply emphasize the importance of your worth being attached to your material wealth. And so those are things that I had adopted. And so it's really valuable for us to re-update our programming. We get all these iOS updates on iPhones if you have that. And it's so funny that we don't do that for ourselves personally. Maybe we wait till it's a New Year's resolution, but then that's kind of a cramped time to double down. There's a lot of shifts and external pressures during that time as well. So how do we do it a little bit more regularly? By holding space. And of course, the value of actually holding that space is that you have a deep anchoring. You feel more of a deep foundation as to why you're making the decisions that you're making, why you're prioritizing certain things, why you're not prioritizing other things. Otherwise, you're kind of like always second guessing, self-doubting. You can go back to, no, these are my values at this time. This is why I'm moving forward in this way. And that builds a lot of confidence in your ability to take successful action and take really grand risks potentially and bet on yourself and your values over the noise, external influences, etc. So now I'll share how this topic became relevant to me specifically. I was thinking actually about the journey of relationship and love that I've been going through is something I would never be open to receiving even 4 years ago. What I used to share on TikTok was like my healthy relationship finding journey, and that was about 4 years ago. And I thought that content was such a hit. Some of it was still relevant to me. It was around, you are ultimately love. Yes, you know that. I hope you know that. You are love, the embodiment of love. And any people that you're seeking externally, they're catalysts in creating a safe space for you to experience that love and express that love, which is so true and wonderful. But I was still in the mindset of seeking, i.e. proactive, going out of your way and prioritizing relationship in that way. And now I'm in a different way of operation where I do believe in taking action, but I do believe it's a collaboration with the universe. I deeply have been taught surrender and knowing that my anchor partner in life is source. So it's a triangular relationship that I would now advocate to anyone, but that's based on my truth. That's where I'm at personally, a triangular relationship with source at the top, God at the top, and therefore have a lot to give. And when I feel depleted, I have to go back to source, God, because there are times at which I receive from other people, receive from the material world, and it fills me temporarily, but when I need the big, good, unconditional love, there is a higher source of that available to me. And that's why I always encourage you all to also tune inward, because it's available to all of us. But as it relates to authenticity, yeah, I was being totally authentic and truthful when I was like, seek for people who, create a safe space for you and all of these things. That was my authentic truth, and that was what I was living by at the time, and it led to one version of a relationship. Now I'm in a different place where the relationship that I'd call in based on my authentic values and what I prioritize is really different, which is wild how much a few years can really change a person. It reminded me of that continued revisitation of what is our truth? What do we really want to anchor in? What are our values? Are we living authentically to them? Relationship is now a priority to me again. My hierarchy has changed, and so this is a recommendation when it comes to different seasons in our life. There's different prioritizations. You might be in a very high work prioritization season. You might be in a very high relationship prioritization season, health prioritization season, spirituality prioritization season. The list goes on and on. Prioritization season. It might be like administrative life tasks and just getting things in order to have a dwelling, to have shelter, to have things together. It might be a season where spiritual life is hugely important to you. It might be a season where travel is a heightened importance and you want to collect as many experiences and adventures as possible. So it's really variable. It might be a learning season for you. It might be a deep time at which you want to be a student and you want to learn something from the ground up. You want to build your language skills. Think of it as slices of the pie. We have our life, which is sadly just a pie because we have limited time and energy in one day. But what can we fit in, and what slices of that pie do we want to give extra room? Maybe you want a really big slice for relationships. Maybe you want a really small slice for work. What does it look like? Can you sustain that? I think that's a helpful way of thinking about these, but you'll organically find a process that works well for you and understand what your priorities are during different seasons and allowing them to shift, allowing them to be, because we are evolving as people and we don't need to put ourselves in such fixed, small, narrow boxes. Now that we know our prioritization generally, which slices of the pie are important to us, it's really helpful to also think about your values. So why are those slices of the pie organized in the way that they are? What is the story behind them? I mentioned maybe it's learning new languages. Maybe it's because you really want to prioritize making sure that you're engaged more highly outside of work, that you're constantly in a learning mode. You want your focus and fascination to be towards curiosity. You really value being curious. Maybe your prioritization is towards family, life, because you really deeply value the depth of relationships there, creating a nurturing home environment, etc. So on and so forth. Start to really build out what the values are and the stories that you're telling yourself around why your slices are larger for some and smaller for others. Now that there's clarity on what your slices of your pie are, your hierarchy for life areas, what your values actually are, next it's helpful to tune into those actions that you will take to align with your values. Given if work is a huge priority, there's going to be so many tasks behind that you might want to ambition against. And then if relationship is a high priority, there might be so much inner work you might want to do to prepare you to receive that relationship. And so thinking in those terms and actually writing down what those action items that you will be taking as a daily practice and ritual and habit and incorporate into your life can be so helpful. I find I feel internal conflict when I'm not clear on that foundation. So this is really helpful in reducing the amount of internal conflict that we have around how much time we're prioritizing into what. And then each day, not being so hard on ourselves, but making a conscious decision to align with our values. So for me, for instance, having my morning ritual, my morning sadhana is so important because my biggest slice of pie, or one of my bigger slices of pie, is spiritual life. And so if I start my day every single morning allowing my time for meditation, time for movement, time for prayer, time for so on and so forth, it feels really high vibrational, and therefore it sets a stage for the rest of my day to work and try to get to that level. It's really helpful for me to make that an anchor for me right now. And then behind that, there's plenty of other things, but really being kind to yourself, compassionate with yourself when you start to deviate a little bit off, and just bring yourself back into the loop. Be like, hey, we see that we're falling into some subconscious patterning that's unhelpful. How can we bring it back? How can we pull it back? I had that rise for me this morning of just being like, hey, thoughts, I see you. I see that you're working on outdated patterning. We are safe, we are secure, we are grounded. We don't need to do that. We have different values and priorities. And then you kind of wrangle all the parts of yourself, because the mind is wild and it needs taming sometimes. And so if we can get more in a practice of taming our mind into focus on the things that really matter to us. So the piece that social media has really run with on living your authentic life has been the visual piece. It's really cool to see people like, I'm going off the grid, I'm living in a van, I am living on a small hut in Bali, I am doing something that's like quite alternative to the norm of culture in the United States, having a car, paying my bills. And so when people deviate from that in lifestyle and then they visually capture it in a very romanticized way, it can look like that is authentic. And there's truth to that. It definitely is authentic to them, but that's not the root of the authenticity. The root is within them. It started before they took those actions. And so don't be judgmental as to if your life doesn't visually seem so dramatically different. It's more about, how do you feel as a person? Do you feel like you're in alignment with your highest self, your inner self? Do you feel in alignment with your soul? And then trust that over time, you're going to start making decisions that subtly change your lifestyle, that subtly move you in the direction of your most authentic self organically. It doesn't always have to be the most dramatic, swift move. So a really good sign that you're living your authentic code, that you're living authentically, is that you feel energized, you feel in alignment, you feel more peace. You don't feel as much internal conflict. You're less doubting of yourself. You are more in trust. You're seeing the ways that people are attracted to you. You become a little bit more magnetic. You see the ways that you have more bandwidth maybe to pour into other people. People are coming to your advice as far as how do you direct. It can feel nice, but always our best guidance is to guide people back to themselves. I hope that you know in tuning in, that is my intention, for you to spend more time exploring yourself, tuning into your heart, really going through the process of identifying what's in alignment for you and what is not, and cutting out what needs to go and is deeply unhealthy, and leaving what might be challenging but growing you, etc. So I just mentioned how there's seasons in which we need to allow there to be changing, and realignment and reprioritization of some of these slices of our pie, of some of our values, some of our action items against them. But also, when the external world changes, which is constantly, continue to maintain grounding on what we are about. So at the top of the year here, there was a change in presidency, administration, and there are many folks who were directly impacted in the immediate. And I think it's beautiful when we can make ourselves more available to those who actually need us to be an anchor, actually need us to be steadiness, actually could use our support. And so that's also the beauty, is that life is changing in so many ebbs and flows. Sometimes we're being directly impacted. Sometimes we're actually not being so heavily directly impacted, and we can be support to other people. So I think that's the world that I would like to see more of. Is right now, I think so many people don't think that they have bandwidth. So many people are like, I don't have bandwidth, I'm so strong, I'm so stressed. And some of those things are so real. But there's also opportunity to better manage our internal states so that we can be available to others. That should be the aspiration. I want to do this not just for myself, it feels amazing for self, but also to be in the place to allow that for others, to allow that for our children, to allow that for friends, family members, etc. Because we need each other. We are interdependent. We definitely can do so much by ourselves, and also it's so beautiful to be able to be in the position to be steady and anchored enough in ourselves that we can support each other. So by you living authentically, hopefully it brings you deep abundance, deep fulfillment, overflow of love, overflow of your radiant light, so that you are attracting wonderful people into your life and you feel more available to those who are struggling. For many of us who've constantly fallen into the role of being the wise sage, or being the unpaid therapist, or being the counselor, or the steadiness for so much of our lives, we want this time to just be free and reckless, etc. But maybe you're good at this. Maybe this is your calling as well. It's really valuable. And if you've been tuning into these videos for a while, I bet you're quite equipped to be able to be more of an anchor for other people, and finding their authenticity and tuning into their inner world and living in accordance to their values. I hope that you can continue to walk your talk, that you can spend time really feeling proud of yourself for all that you accomplish, even if it's counterculture, even if it's not in alignment with the norm. You know your goals and objectives in this lifetime. I'm sending you so much love. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, hit the like button, subscribe on YouTube. If you listened on audio, 5-star review is super welcome. I'm sending you love.